All right, I am so excited today to sit down for a conversation with my friend Karin Calde. Calde, right?
Calde.
Calde. And we are going to be talking today about the subconscious bloom, which is going to be all about the therapeutic use of psilocybin. And we're going to explore lots of different territory today. And so let's jump in I'm going to give just a quick introduction to Karin, and then we'll get started. So Karin is a PhD level clinical psychologist turned deeply attuned relationship and self growth coach. With extensive training in IFS, somatic experiencing, and other integrative healing modalities, she brings both professional expertise and personal lived experience to her work. Karin is also a licensed psilocybin facilitator in the state of Oregon, maybe other places, as is it just Oregon?
It's just Oregon, yeah.
Oregon, okay, where she supports clients through transformative experiences grounded in safety, nervous system regulation, and meaningful connection. Her approach is rooted in compassion, trauma-informed care, and a profound belief in the healing power of love and relational integrity. So, Karin, welcome to this conversation. I am really thrilled to have you here to be able to talk about this. I think that it's something that is so it's gaining a lot of interest right now, and people are curious about it. I know I've been curious about it. Been fortunate to have people like you in my life who've been able to help me understand more about it. And it's something that, like, so many of us know magic mushrooms. We know the kind of like exploratory, more like, I don't know, like fun use of them, if you will. And and so just take us into maybe like what brought you into wanting to use them, explore them, like what it means to you to use them therapeutically, just so we can ground in that to get us started and kind of maybe move us out of any territory of them being like just like, the magic mushroom that we know them to be in other context.
Yeah, sure. And thank you for having me, Katrina. I'm super excited to talk with you and your group and whoever happens to pop in. Um, so I had never even considered using psychedelics when I was younger. It was not my thing. I knew my brother had used them, and I thought that was I just didn't understand. I thought that was a little bit, if I can use the word, a little bit crazy. And so I was really interested, though, when Michael Pollan's book came out, because I was a fan of his. You know, he's a science writer, and so he came out with this book called How to Change Your Mind, and my mind really was blown. I had no idea of the all of the beneficial effects of psychedelics and how it can help us grow. So
Mhm.
not only heal, but also grow and be more healthy in our lives. And I was also really interested because, I have, a son who's on the autism spectrum or has a lot of those features, and psychedelics were supposed to be good for helping people with rigid thinking. So I thought, well, maybe at some point he would be interested in this. But I was also just really curious for myself, and wasn't sure really how to go about doing this. But I just, started Googling and I found, the Portland Psychedelic Society. And of course, it wasn't legal here yet, but it's a very big active group here. And I was able to connect with some people and ended up having my own first experience, which was just beautiful. And it opened me up to more and exploring more and other psychedelics. And um, it was something that was, one of the most significant events of my life.
Mm, mm.
So then to be able to then, when I was coaching more and working with clients, I could see this opportunity for those who were stuck, especially. Those who are wanting more, either again, either healing or just wanting to get to that next place in their relationships, or what have you. Yeah, I could see the incredible potential.
Yeah, yeah. And oh gosh, there's so many directions to take this conversation, but I think I'd love to just begin to explore like what that is that it unlocks the potential for, right? So I can relate in terms of like with my work. The reason I went into hypnotherapy was because I could just feel that there was this like block where it's like, oh, if we could just go a little bit deeper, if we could just get out of the way a little bit with the mind and get under the surface. And I think about that, getting under the surface when it comes to mushrooms because that's, they're like doing all this networking and all this incredible work under the surface of the ground, right? And so tell me a little bit about what that's been like to incorporate that, like what you see that doing in terms of unlocking, getting under the surface, like how the benefit of it in where it can take you beyond, traditional coaching or therapy.
Yeah. And just like you said, there's so many different directions that I can go
Yeah.
with this. And, I'll just say that, at the high level, um, that, mushrooms seem to connect with your inner intelligence, your inner healing intelligence, and unlocks that. And it's which so interesting because for everyone it's different. What everyone needs is a little bit different. And there's some theories that what it does is it works on a part of the brain, the brain networks that's called the DMN, the default mode network. And
Mhm.
what the DMN does is it really gives us our sense of self, but it also is responsible for that self-referential thinking and that rumination, that anxiety, that worry, and that they believe that there's something there that might be at the root of a lot of mental health issues. And
Mhm.
so that's why it seems to be like a panacea, like it can heal just about everything. That it somehow helps people to unlock those patterns and soften and be able to create something new for themselves, because they're not in these rigid patterns of that DMN. So that's just a little bit of science, but it also, in another way of saying it is that it helps to helps our defenses to soften back, or those protective parts of us that want to keep us safe, but really keep us from seeing the whole picture. And so when our defenses quiet down and soften, then something new emerges, something new that's ready to receive, something that can see the bigger picture.
Mhm.
One of my Buddhist teachers, wrote a book called A Bigger Sky. And she talks about how, if we roll up a piece of paper and, we do this and we look at the sky, it's like, well, are we really looking at the sky? Like, well, yeah, but there's so much more. And psilocybin helps you see so much more. Because again, we all have those blocks, we all have those protectors that are trying to keep us safe, but also can be really limiting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's another way to put it.
And this limited perspective, I mean, so with you called it the DMN,
Hmm.
is that a like a part of, I'm not familiar with it. Like, is it a part of the brain? Is it a like a kind of like is it more like theoretical and like in like the way like an operation in the brain, like do you know? Can you describe it a little bit
Absolutely.
more?
Yeah, yeah. So no, this is actually we know this that there's the DMN is a combination of different parts of the brain that communicate with one another. So this is fact. This is
Yeah.
science.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we know that psilocybin quiets the DMN. And there are lots of, fMRI studies that show that when we are in the flow of something,
Mhm.
that actually turns off.
Oh,
When we are worried or ruminating, that turns on. And psilocybin quiets it down. And that's actually what appears to be happening when people experience something that you might have heard of, ego death.
yeah. I was just going to ask you if the DMN is associated with the ego, because it
Yes,
sounds like that
yes.
protective kind of activated, like I have to be like aware of myself to be safe.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's where we get that sense of self. It's our memories and our history and things like that. That's all part of that. Um, and again, it can be, part of what happens when we get depressed, when we are thinking, we overthink and we think badly of ourselves, and we're thinking, oh, I should be this, I should be that. I've made all these mistakes. And so that's the DMN at
Mm,
work. And other things too,
yeah.
like the HPA axis, the stress response in our body. There was just this morning, I saw a new study that had just come out of Pakistan that talked about how, they psilocybin helps to modulate that stress response, and that helps to lower depression. And so, all these new things that we keep learning.
Yeah, yeah. It's so interesting, right? Because if again, thinking about it in terms of just if you're quieting that protective stance, you're slipping out of just the limited perspective of self, then you open to that like greater network of what's going on, how you can perceive something, other possibilities, right? And then from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe describe it more, the mushrooms then kind of take you on a journey into like what's beneficial for you in that more expanded knowing.
Yes, and so when those protective parts quiet down and that DMN starts to quiet down, then we can look at things from a totally different perspective. And it also we also believe that it quiets the amygdala, that fear response, and that also helps us look at things more clearly. I mean, just an example, I had a journey where after I'd had a rift with my father, was super, super painful. And it helped me see things from a new perspective. And it helped me feel this deep love for him and come to a place of forgiveness. I mean, it was incredibly healing. And I couldn't do that before. That's the psilocybin helped me to open up and see that.
Which is so, I mean, which has nothing to do, right, with the other person. That has nothing to do. It's maybe beneficial for your father or but like that's a deep healing that is really hard to access for a lot of people. That level of forgiveness, that ability to see from another's perspective, but like the healing that's able to happen within in terms of unlocking energy that's maybe stuck, right? Like that's how I would frame it in my work, that is, and maybe you too, right? Maybe we can
Mhm.
no, before I jump into that, let's go there. Let's talk about how you, because I know you work with the chakras too, right? And that's primarily like the foundational aspect of my work. If we could just journey into that overlay, I think it'd be really interesting to bring that together in terms of energetically. How do you see that, like the mushrooms working with the chakras?
Yeah, and I can't say that I'm an expert about chakra work. I mean, I know a little bit, but one of the things that I'll never forget when I was going through my training is, one of my favorite teachers. She had this wonderful blend of this deep scientific knowledge, but was also really spiritual,
Mm,
and she worked with a lot of clients at the spiritual level,
mhm.
and she said that during her work and during a psilocybin journey, she could often see the energy moving through people's bodies through the different chakras during their experience, which I thought it was fascinating. Now, I haven't had it, I haven't experienced it in quite that same way, but I have seen quite a few people process their trauma in their bodies during their work. And so I'll see them actually, shaking and twitching, and that's yeah, that you can think of as that energy moving and those blockages opening up in their bodies to allow that energy to flow. It can be incredibly powerful. Um, I'll say that also because psilocybin is an amplifier. So whatever you're working on and focusing on, that tends to come through in the work. So if you are working on your chakras, then there's more of a chance that you're going to experience that and be tuned into that work as it's happening during your journey. So
Mm.
that can be really powerful too.
Yeah, I'm wondering like if it's a sometimes I talk about like a hypnotherapy session or even a retreat circle, like times where we're really diving into the work, right? Like whatever that work is for each person. And I often will refer to it as like a time where you can like quantum leap through, because you're like focusing on it in this really intentional way with like in a condensed time frame or a condensed way. Like maybe that's kind of what's happening even more. I don't even know what that would call be called, not a quantum leap, like a quantum, I don't know, something else, where like the amount of maybe time or the amount, like maybe it's a more intense experience, but the amount of time it's going to take to journey into that aspect and massage it and work with it and open it up and free it, um, which is how I would frame like what I'm doing with it with energy work, but like maybe that you're able to like get in there and do it a little bit faster. Would you
Yeah.
say like that's
Oh,
kind of like,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you hear people saying, "Oh, I, had one experience and it was like 10 years of therapy." And for some people, it really is like that
Yeah.
because they have been blocked and it helps them get past that. And then they can dive in and really
Hmm.
do some work. And truthfully, for most people, what you experience is the insights around it. It's like, oh, now I get it. Now I understand. Now I see what I need to do. And then the actual work comes afterwards with that, with the integration and that ongoing work. So, um, yeah, it's oftentimes, yeah, the insights, the information that comes to you
Yeah.
during a psilocybin session.
But then it's almost like, because like it's almost like getting to then just unpack it and work with it rather than having to spend the time getting into it. Like what is it? Like what am I even working with? What is there? What do I need to explore? I mean, sometimes that's like a pretty decent aspect of I mean, I feel like there's like this whole path into the work, and then so you get to like kind of dive in with the psilocybin and then begin to unpack it and work with it, work with what you discovered.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I gave that example of, um, the shaking that can happen. I mean, that
Mhm.
itself can be incredibly therapeutic
Mhm.
when people, and that's usually a release of trauma that's been held in the body.
Mhm.
That's when we usually see that physical response. And that in itself can be incredibly healing for people.
Do you think that that is, I know there's a lot of research that's come out recently about psilocybin use and longevity and actual like healing in the body. Do you think, I mean, that's where my mind immediately goes is like when our body is liberated from the energy, like the dense tissue of our body is able to actually have healing as well. So we're not just talking about it on this like emotional mental, level. We're talking about on the actual physical level. Do you think that is why there's this association with longevity and with actual physical healing?
I think that, I don't really know for sure. We're still learning, but
Yeah.
yeah, there was a study that came out of, Baylor University and out of Texas, and this summer. And
Mhm.
yeah, they had looked at human tissue and they worked with mice and they gave, psilocybin to older mice, like it would be equivalent of maybe 60 years old in humans. And they found that, yeah, they lived significantly longer than their peers who didn't have psilocybin, but they also was fascinating to me that there's something on our DNA strands called telomeres, and it is a reflective of the health of our DNA and our cells. And when the telomeres start to break down, it's a sign of aging and decline, and you end up having more health issues when those break down. And psilocybin was protective of those telomeres. Um, Really powerful study and really interesting, and it brings up the question of whether or not, we should be using psilocybin regularly for our health, our physical, mental, emotional health in general. So, maybe that's to come. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that is super fascinating to me, and I'm really excited to learn more as more information comes out. Um, Tell me a little bit about, I know, like, oftentimes people think about using psilocybin in terms of these like journeys, these like what we've been talking about, this like going in and like these quantum leaps and like coming face to face with whatever it is inside. And but there's another way to work with it, which is microdosing, and that's gained some popularity in the last few years. So, and I know you work with both. Can you tell us a little bit about comparing the experience and what it is to microdose versus macrodose?
Yeah, so microdosing is, it is a really exciting way to use psilocybin. Um, the big dose isn't for everybody. And um, and they can also be used in conjunction with one another because you can have a big macrodose journey and then use the psilocybin to extend the benefits of that big journey. Um, I hope I'm not going off on too much of a tangent, but one of the major benefits of using psilocybin is the neuroplasticity. And that's the brain's ability to adapt and learn and change and create new habits and let go of old ones that no longer serve you. And so that's one of the things that happens with a big journey is that there's this window of time afterwards when you have that increased neuroplasticity. And microdosing helps to extend that neuroplasticity.
Mm,
Um, Microdosing on its own is also believed to contribute to neuroplasticity, maybe not as much as a big journey, but also it seems to have an effect there too.
mm,
And so, yeah, microdosing can be beneficial at so many different levels.
mm,
So, yeah, it can help with neuroplasticity. It's been shown to help with depression, anxiety, long COVID symptoms, ADHD, hormonal issues for women, um, so many more. Just off the top of my head, there's a lot of them. It can be really helpful for people who want to stop taking medications, and so it can be a way, like a bridge for them.
mhm.
And it can also help with things like creativity and performance. So it can help at a lot of different levels. Um, yeah, I'll stop there.
And what does it like just maybe describing like with the macro dose, it's like an event, right? Like it's like hours of diving in. With micro dosing, it's completely different, right? Like it is a daily thing that you don't necessarily maybe shouldn't even know you're experiencing, right? Like so can you talk a little bit about what that experience is like for someone who hasn't experimented with it?
Yeah, and I'll just, back up that a little bit saying
Yeah.
it's not something we necessarily want to do daily,
Uh-huh.
but it is something that we do on a regular basis in general. But yes, it should be what we say. I like the way to describe it is sub-threshold.
Mhm.
So it's not that you want to feel like you're high. If you feel like you're high or if you're on something, then you took too much. So, when you microdose, you should be able to go about your day as usual. And, we often recommend that you do it on days when you want to have a higher level of focus and you want to get a lot done. It seems to help people in more subtle ways around those types of things. It can help with things like mental clarity and focus and mood and sleep. And so, and it also appears. We think at the microdose level, but definitely at the macrodose level, to also increase that connection between mind and body, that interoception. So it kind of clears the static between that line of communication, and so we're able to tune in more to our bodies and to what we need. We're able to open up to our intuition. So all of those things can happen with the microdosing. Now, the thing is that because it's not so dramatic, tracking becomes really important with microdosing. You don't have to do it, but you might not notice the changes if you don't. So, what I like to recommend is that before people even start microdosing, they start tracking some of the things that are important to them. Maybe that's mood, maybe that's mental clarity, that's focus, sleep, those types of things. And then, on a scale from 1 to 10, and then you start tracking them when you start microdosing. That's when you say, oh, well, I know I had a pretty good day when I microdosed. I didn't notice anything dramatic. But then you rate, oh, my mental clarity today was an 8. And you look back on before you started, and it's like, oh, it was a 5 or a 6. And
Mhm.
so you might not remember quite as obviously that was what you had experienced prior. But when you track it like that, then you can really see those subtle changes that can then build on one another.
Yeah, that makes so much sense to me because it's very similar with the work I do with like the subtle energy. When you're working with that subtle energy, it's not going to have that like major it will have a major impact, but likely over time. That is often like imperceptible day to day, but then adds up. And it's a really gentle way to move through healing and but so good too to track it so that you can recognize. I mean, I think people eventually do if they stay with something like that long enough, right? Where it's like, oh, a year later, I do feel markedly different, but really helpful to know that on a week by week basis, a month by month, like, oh, things are shifting and they're shifting in this way that's so easeful, like it where you can just kind of let it happen. And that's a really so many people I talk to are like, oh, like this, like the work it's gonna take and the like healing just feels like this like journey up a mountain, and it is like there is if there's things to heal, which we all have, right? Like it can feel like there is work to be done, right? But I think things like this, like psilocybin, are ways to assist it that help some of the work to just be done in the background, where it's not such an effort.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, the macrodose journey might feel really scary or overwhelming to a lot of
Yeah.
people. And
Hmm.
this is a much gentler approach, and I think is well tolerated by a wider range of people. And so, I work a lot with, women in midlife, who are in perimenopause or menopause. And so, this is a really beautiful way to work with your cycles. And, the way that I recommend doing it, I call rhythm dosing. And it really does work with you, your energetic cycles, your hormonal cycles, your mood, all of that. Uh, because a lot of the microdosing protocols, well, they're all created by men for men. And that can be fine. That can work great. But for most women, they need something just a little bit different. And, microdosing in this way can be really supportive of, what they're trying to do and their healing, their wellness, all of it.
I'm so glad you brought that up, 'cause that's exactly where I was gonna take it next, which is because you said it's not necessarily something you take daily. And and that's especially true from what I understand for women. Maybe it is for everybody, but for women, what I love about the work you do so much is that you're really helping for women to understand how to work with it with their cycle, and to support this journey through midlife, which is so much about um truly like empowerment, and claiming like your wisdom years, and that very physical thing that's happening, it coincides so well with like this healing journey. And so, yeah, I'd love for you to like share a little bit more about just about maybe like what you've seen in that, how like maybe like an overview of how you work with it, what you've seen benefit, how like the benefit of doing that through this transition in life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just start by saying that, one of the things that happens with psilocybin is that it works on the serotonin system. And estrogen and women's hormones also work on the serotonin system. And so, as women's estrogen decreases and their progesterone, really has a profound effect on the body, all systems of the body. And psilocybin can help to even that out.
Mm.
But it's also really important to understand where you are hormonally so that you don't overwhelm your system. Because if you were to microdose perhaps on your period, a lot of people find that too much for their bodies. And so it's good to know that, that maybe you take that period of time off. And everyone's going to be a little different. For some people, they might find it fine,
Mhm.
but others, it's just a little bit too much physically. So we take that into consideration. And I also look at where you are hormonally. Are you pre-menopause, perimenopause, menopause? Are you 10 plus years out? Have you had a hysterectomy? Are you taking hormones? All of those things
Mm.
can have an impact on your experience and will also influence, my recommendations on how much and when you take it. So what I've noticed is that when people do this with intention, and then they also weave in like a stillness practice, so that they are really taking that time to listen within. And not only does it help them figure out what they need from the medicine, but also what they need in their lives. Um, Part of the work is setting intentions. And this we do this for the bigger journeys, but we also do it for the microdosing as well. And so I help women create um, intentions for the work because you want to give it a direction,
Mhm.
or else it can kind of do anything. And it still might be beneficial, but if you give it an intention, then you're more likely to get out of it what you're seeking. And that's what I have found too.
Yeah, it's like you're chatting with the mushrooms, like saying, "Help me with this," And that connection with I mean, I think that I've heard that with any kind of plant medicine, even any medicine, truly, is to have a way that you are that you're communicating with it, so that you have a direction within yourself, an intention within yourself, and then a way that you're connecting with this medicine before physically connecting with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, the intentions are a a vital piece of it. When
Mhm.
I first started microdosing, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't track. I didn't have intentions. I didn't have an idea of really how much I should take, and it was it was definitely it went from an overwhelming experience to an underwhelming experience. I thought, well, it's just
Mhm.
not for me.
Mm.
But now that I know how to do it, I mean, it's so much more effective and I find it really supportive. And I've never slept better than when I've
That's a huge thing.
started
A lot of
microdosing.
people want to know how to sleep better. Right?
Yeah.
especially through the journey of perimenopause and menopause that can become a real thing.
Hmm.
Is there anybody that shouldn't take it? Like, is it contraindicated for anybody?
Um, it's not a good idea to do if you're in the middle of a crisis.
Mm,
Because like I said, it's an amplifier. And
mhm,
so it can make those whatever you're going through, a little bit too overwhelming. You
mm,
might already be overwhelmed. And so this is not a good thing to add to that. There are certain medications that you really shouldn't combine with it. There
mhm,
aren't many though, because it's such a low dose.
mm,
It's safe for most things. So I think it's tramadol, and then if you're taking lithium, which is
mm,
something some people might take for
mhm,
bipolar. People with that really disorganized thinking that comes along with schizophrenia
mhm,
probably shouldn't do it. Um, People with bipolar are probably okay, but I would want to talk to you and I'd want to have a solid plan um,
mhm,
for you. They used to exclude people that have bipolar from all the studies, and now they're
mhm,
kind of learning that actually, if you're in the right place, it might benefit you, but you've got to be careful and you have to really
mm,
work with someone who knows what
mhm.
they're who knows what they're doing.
You had showed me a chart that was about the safety, and I found it to just be really fascinating compared to other things. I think you have it handy. I think that'd be really interesting to share because that is one of the things that I think comes up when it just around any kind of like what we know as like drug use, right? Like how safe is it? So,
Yes.
I'd love if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know if I can share this
Mm,
if I've sharing permission.
I
Hmm.
think so.
I think I have to send request here.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Okay. So, yeah, this is super interesting. So this was published alongside an article written by someone by the name of David Nutt, and he is a psychopharmacologist, I think, and he has been around a long time. And he's actually created this organization, this nonprofit that can really be free of any influence, so they can look at these different drugs, these different substances, and understand their potential benefits and their harms. And so he wrote this article for The Lancet over 10 years ago now, and he included in the article this chart that looks at the relative risks associated with all these different substances. And in it, you'll see in red represents the harm to others, and in blue is harm to the user. And when you look at all these things, it's actually alcohol that's the most dangerous. And then over here, you have cocaine, tobacco. Over here is ketamine. And then all the way over here is mushrooms. Incredibly safe, very low toxicity level on the body.
Mm,
And so, that often goes a long way in easing people's minds when they see this and they realize and they start to feel mentally all these effects and physically and psychologically all these things that are happening in a big session, and it can be a little scary if you've never used different kinds of substances like this, and it's super helpful to know that actually you are very safe.
mm.
It's just that yeah, it works on our brains in different kinds of ways.
Such a such a great thing to know though, because that can often, I think, relieve that stress that will maybe prevent the medicine from doing its having its full being able to sink into it and let it do what it does.
Yeah,
When we can know we're safe, that's really helpful.
yeah.
So
Can I say
you
one other
yeah,
thing?
uh-huh.
So, another common question that I get is, well, what about if I'm taking an antidepressant?
Mm,
And for a long time, we believed that you shouldn't combine the two, that you might get something called serotonin syndrome, which is really dangerous. But we actually know that that's not how mushrooms work, and there's actually little to no risk of that if you're taking an SSRI. The thing that can happen, though, if you are taking an antidepressant, it's sometimes for some people, depending on how long you've taken it and your unique biology or physiology, it can blunt the effect. So it can be that you take the psilocybin and you just don't feel much.
Mm,
And so in that case, you might need more, or it could be that tapering off might benefit you, or switching to a different kind of antidepressant might benefit you. But I've worked with a lot of people because who are taking antidepressants, because of course we get a lot of people who are seeking relief from things like depression and anxiety and PTSD. So you
yeah.
have a lot of those people using these substances, and in almost every case, they're still able to have a significant experience and a safe one.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I mean, I know just through my own experience with clients and people I've known that it's been a really effective tool to replace. I mean, I think of anything that we use as a medicine, whether it actually be a medicine, like a clinical medicine or medicine that is alcohol or it's like some other thing that we use to cope, that this has been a really effective tool to find a new way to medicate, maybe a way that feels more aligned.
Yeah. Yeah, and doesn't have all the side effects and
Yeah.
all the downsides of using these substances. And yeah, and I will just say that I've had a number of clients who have either stopped drinking
Hmm.
after their experience or significantly reduced it. Or people who had stopped drinking before but still struggled. And they said, oh, now I don't even have any interest. So it can be a really powerful way to help people stop using those other substances. And the psilocybin itself is non-addictive. I mean, most people, after they've had a journey, they have no interest in doing it again for a while. It's
Yeah.
like that's
Yeah.
enough for their body knows it's enough, and it doesn't have that dopamine
Mm.
triggering effect that can lead to that physical addiction.
I briefly want to touch on this, and I'm wondering, hmm. No, you know what? I think maybe it's just going to be a part two conversation given the time, because I want to make sure. I'm just going to touch on it, and maybe I'll leave it as like a cliffhanger, because two things that really like made me so curious about your work. I mean, about just beyond you being a really cool person and someone who I've come to really appreciate as a friend, is that was the direct work that you do with cycles and women and menopause, and like helping to assist that with psilocybin. And the other thing that I think is really unique is your approach with relationships and couples, and
Mhm.
working in this way to assist relationships.
Yeah.
And so, so many people shy away from relationship work as it is. And so leaning into it and having that skill and bringing psilocybin along with it. If you could just kind of speak to your approach around that, and then know that, if we feel like we want to journey in more, we'll just make it a part two and go in deeper.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because yeah, there's so much to say about this, and
Yeah.
that's where I get really excited about this work is because, and there was even another study published just today about all the different ways that it can help people, which then benefits their intimate relationships and their other relationships as well. I mean, there's also studies that look at, anxious attachment. The people that I've worked with that have anxious attachment, those are some of my most beautiful, excuse me, beautiful stories. Um,
Mhm.
it can be incredibly healing, and yeah, yeah. I could go on and on and on. Psilocybin isn't usually the psychedelic of choice for couples. Although I have worked with one couple who used it together, and I was not so sure about how this was going to come out. There were some red flags, but it ended up being a beautiful experience and a really bonding one for them. And so it can be used together. More often, I recommend that people do it on their own, which can then help them bring all the benefits that they experience back to the relationship, and that can be a beautiful thing too. Or people can do it at the same time with different facilitators at the same facility, and then kind of come together toward the end of the journey, and that can be a really beautiful experience.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, if you were to go with a psychedelic that is known for relationship work, I mean, that would be MDMA.
Mhm.
Um, that can be a beautiful medicine to work with for relationships. But I also love what I've seen with psilocybin.
Yeah, yeah, and maybe, I mean, maybe some of it is just that decision to intentionally both work with, what's under the surface
Hmm.
at the same
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and psilocybin often is, we go inside. It's very personal work. And it really helps us again, like I said earlier, helps us to see things more clearly. And so that can help with better communication, being a little bit more empathetic towards your partner, maybe come to a place of acceptance, forgiveness. It's also been shown to improve sexual functioning and sexual satisfaction between couples. And so, I mean, there are all these different ways that it can benefit relationships. That's just a little snapshot.
Well, maybe that's a part two coming soon. I wanted to I know Sherry, you're here with us live. If you had any questions, you can feel free to pop them in now.
Hi. I have loved this conversation. I'm more familiar with macrodosing than I am with microdosing, so I find it really fascinating about working with the cycles and where you are in life with all of that. That is very cool. Um, and I've loved seeing how it's become more mainstream. Like there's the Moms on Mushrooms group, and there was a podcast recently that We Can Do Hard Things where Glennon Doyle went into her trip and how it like opened this key into her generational trauma. And it's all fascinating. And I love that it's getting spread like that.
Mhm.
Um, where do you see it going? Do you see demand increasing? I came in late, so I'm guessing you're a facilitator.
Yes.
Karin, yeah. Do you
Yeah,
see a demand for it increasing here in Portland or nationwide?
great question. It's interesting. I actually get probably a little bit more than half of my clients from out of state.
Mm,
Um, I think there is quite a culture here in the Portland area around psychedelics, and a lot of people
hmm
are familiar with it and sit with one another, and it happens a lot that way, but not everyone. But yes, I think that the demand is going to increase. The people who have looked at, um, I see that it's this huge opportunity for this work to be done. And
hmm
that in the future, it might be that therapists are primarily doing the work around, depression, anxiety, PTSD, OCD, those types of things that people bring to the medicine. But then
hmm
there's also this huge opportunity for health and wellness. It's like it's not just about healing. It's about I want to grow my spirituality. I want to feel more of a connection with God or something else. I want to understand how I can grow my relationships or how I can be more creative in my work. I want to really connect with my sense of purpose. Is a beautiful one. There's so much that can be done with the work, and yeah, they do believe that it's just going to skyrocket. We're,
Yeah, it touches upon,
yeah,
yes, so many different aspects of the human experience, right? That it's pretty incredible in that way.
yeah, yeah. It's really exciting.
Yes.
Yeah, great
Thank
question.
you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we're gonna have to have another conversation at some point, Karen, and go a little bit deeper into the relationship stuff. And just so appreciate you taking the time today to come and chat with me and share about this really important work that you're doing and the ways that you can use it. And I'm super excited. I think it's okay to share. I've been doing a lot of I've explored microdosing quite a bit over the past few years, but I'm going to be doing a macrodose soon with Karin, and maybe I'll share about it more here on in my group. And I'd be happy to share about my experience with that. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, and I'm super excited too. Excited for you, Katrina, and super grateful that I get to be able to do that with you and be part of that. And I have so enjoyed being able to talk to you today. We didn't even get into how, the work opens up, that the feminine and masculine, and how it can really help
Mm.
us tap into that softer side of us, that intuition, all of that. And so, yes, I think we need to have a second conversation.
Yeah, because that is one of my favorite conversations. I just did a whole Shiva Shakti workshop, and that is something that is near and dear to the work I do and what I love to talk about. So that'll fit perfectly with relationship, and maybe I can share a little bit about my journey with you, and we'll have a part two. Stay tuned, everyone.
I second that motion.
Yeah,
Yes.
oh, good. And if you are watching, I know there are several people who are going to catch the replay. So if you're watching that, you want to pop questions below, I'll make sure that Karin sees them, and we are happy to continue the conversation in the comments. So just ask away if you have any thoughts you want to share, any questions you have.
And then is it okay if I share my email with people too?
Absolutely. Yes, please do.
Yeah, if you have any questions for me, if you have any interest in doing a big or small journey, or microdosing, I never pressure anyone into doing this work. I really do believe it's for people who are feeling called. So I love just to have conversations and to answer any questions. And if you want to have that conversation with me, you can always email me. My email, and I am on Instagram too, but my email is Karin, Karin, at drcalde.com. So that's drcalde.com.
And I'll pop that information in the comments section in the post along with this live video that will go into the group, so
That's
that so you can find it below if you're watching the replay and need a click. Thank you so much, Karin. It's been super fun to sit and chat with you, and we'll do it again soon.
Yeah, thank you, Katrina. I've really enjoyed it.
Have a good one. And thanks for joining live, Sherry.
Thank you. I loved it.
Bye.
Bye.